Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And it's that time, folks, the final opening day roster prediction. Who gets the final spots? We'll break it down on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is another episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio doing sports talk and everything like that here in Philadelphia for 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 3 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's free, it's easy, and it really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. So it helps you, helps me. If you haven't subscribed yet to the YouTube, I would love for you to do so. If you have, thank you very much for doing that. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So in today's episode, of course, we have our final roster prediction for the 2026 season, for opening day at least. Of course, things are going to change throughout the season. We're going to start with the position players. Who gets that final position player spot? We're going to go to the bullpen. There are 2 spots open, really 1 if you believe what I believe. And then we're going to round out today's episode with some uncertainty I've been hearing about the lineup due to what the Phillies have been doing in spring training. And I got to have another little calm down moment with the fan base. So we'll get to that later on. But I've been flipping back and forth on a lot of guys when it comes to the opening day roster prediction. And now with 9 days till opening day, next Tuesday, which is just 2 days before, we'll have the roster pretty much set. It may be even announced by then. So this is basically my last chance to make my prediction for who's, as I sneeze, I must be allergic to getting this prediction, but this will be my last chance to do so before the actual roster is announced. So here's my go at it. We've had, again, changes throughout the spring. There are still some big-time question marks in the final couple of spots on the roster, but there are a lot of things that are locked down. So we'll start with the position players. And obviously, catcher has not changed for me. I don't think it's changed for the Phillies throughout the spring. JT Realmuto is going to be the starter. Rafael Marchand is going to get that depth spot. Garrett Stubbs is going to start in the minors for the 2025 season. It just makes sense. You would lose Marchand if you did not have him on the opening day roster. Stubbs has a minor league option. That seems like a no-brainer. Now, here's where things may turn around a little bit. In previous versions, I've had Cody Clemens making the team, and there is a guy that has hung around long enough that seems to be an interesting candidate for the Philadelphia Phillies to put on the opening day roster. We'll get to that, but let's knock out the guys that are definitively going to be on the roster. Bryce Harper, Bryson Stott, Trey Turner, Alec Bohm, Edmundo Sosa. Those guys are all locks. Sosa is actually, interestingly enough, because, they were considering trying him at outfield or putting him back out there. He's tried it in previous spots in his major league career. I believe St. Louis tried him in the outfield, at least in spring training, maybe in the regular season a little bit, and it didn't really work out. Well, he seems to have been serviceable enough to continue to consider that as a possibility, but he was going to be on the team either way as your utility infielder. I had Cody Clemens. Cody Clemens hits left-handed. And let's look at the outfielders first before we get into why it may not be Cody Clemens. In the outfield, you're going to have Max Kepler, Brandon Marsh, Nick Castellanos as your starters. Yohan Rojas is going to be the number 1 depth guy. Kyle Schwarber is going to be your DH, and you have lefty in Schwarber, lefty in Marsh, lefty in Kepler. Ideally, you would want to add more righty depth as a hitter. Edmundo Sosa is a right-handed hitter, but you look at the infielders, Harper bats left-handed, Stott bats left-handed. You got a pretty heavy dose of lefties, and your team, the lefties wise, has struggled against lefty pitchers. Rob Thompson has said recently when Mackenzie Gore, who was a lefty, was announced as the opening day starter for Washington, that the Phillies are going to see their heavy diet of lefty pitchers like they always do because they have a couple guys that struggle with those. Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott, guys like that you're looking at. Max Kepler could be another one. So we will see how that plays out. But that brings me to this point about the final position player spot. It would ideally be an outfielder, but Weston Wilson is banged up. Even though he's both infield and outfield, he'd be more comfortable in the outfield than some of the other options that you have as a depth piece guy. But who I'm looking at is Christian Arroyo. Now, Christian Arroyo, we haven't really talked about him at all on the podcast. So it would be crazy that a guy that we haven't really mentioned have him make the opening day roster. But he's starting to gain a little bit more steam, and part of that is because the right-handed bat exists. Now, you look at that and you say, okay, where has he played? Well, he spent time with the Red Sox and multiple other organizations. He spent time with Tampa, a year with Cleveland, or rather part of the 2020 season with Cleveland. He was with the Giants. So he has major league experience. He's a career 252 hitter. He, of course, is a righty that plays second, third, shortstop. So he's played all over the place, doesn't play outfield. So you're not going to look at him and say, okay, well, we can move him to the outfield like maybe they're going to try and do with Edmundo Sosa at some point this season. But if you're looking at just pinch hit scenarios, he may be the best option available. I like what Cody Clemens has shown for the Phillies, but Christian Arroyo has more major league experience across the board. He's not going to be a major power guy. He has, over the course of his 7 years in Major League Baseball, only 24 home runs. So he'll hit one eventually for the Philadelphia Phillies if he comes up. But the average has been pretty darn good lately. 2021 for Boston, he batted .262, batted .286 in 2022, but then dropped to .241 in 2023. It's not like you're bringing in a guy who's going to be a plus major league hitter, but you're bringing in a guy with experience that is a righty bat what you need. I was looking at righties in the outfield, and if you can't find that, then just go with best player available, which I still think Cody Clemens gives himself a good shot to make this team with what he's done with the Phillies in the past. But I'm torn between Arroyo and Clemens. I don't think Buddy Kennedy's in the conversation anymore. I don't see that as likely. I don't think Cal Stevenson's in the conversation anymore. But those are the two guys it comes down to. So now I have to ask myself, do I trust my gut, or do I change last minute to Christian Arroyo as my final spot on the Philadelphia Phillies? And with Rob Thompson's recent comments, I am going to flip it. I'm going to give the final spot on my opening day roster prediction, as far as position players are concerned, to Christian Arroyo. He's an infield depth guy that probably won't play much in the field, but if you're going to have an at-bat for a lefty later in the game, and your options are Edmundo Sosa, who may be playing that day. That's the other thing you got to remember. Edmundo Sosa is going to be out there. So he's not a great pinch hit option, because chances are, as we get deeper into the season, he's going to be a guy that is on the playing field more often than pinch hitting. Weston Wilson, by the way, whoever gets a spot, Weston Wilson's probably going to take it from him as soon as he's healthy. So this may even be just a thing for like a week or two. But if you need early pinch hit opportunities, I think you're going to like Christian Arroyo more than you like Cody Clemens, because the guys you're going to be pinch hitting for are most likely going to be left-handed hitters. And that's why the righty gets the nod here in the final roster prediction. So to run through the names again, for who I have as position players making the Philadelphia Phillies, you got JT and Rafael Marchand, Harper, Stott, Turner, Bohm, Sosa, and Christian Arroyo now for the first time is going to be in my prediction as we get closer to opening day. Kepler, Marsh, Rojas, Castellanos, and Schwarber in the outfield. And that's a darn good team. I mean, JT's an all-star. Harper's an all-star. Stott could be when he's at his best. Turner's an all-star. Bohm's an all-star. Edmundo Sosa's a great depth piece. Arroyo's a guy with major league experience. Kepler's not an all-star, but he's a serviceable left fielder. Marsh is better than people give him credit for, a serviceable outfielder. Castellanos is an all-star caliber guy. Schwarber is an all-star caliber guy. And Rojas is a great defensive option. I mean, there's nobody on that team besides maybe Christian Arroyo that's just like a guy, right? None of these dudes are just who in the world is that guy. And a lot of teams in baseball have a who in the world is that guy type of name that they're going to have to, or names that they're going to have to put on the roster on opening day, because frankly, they don't have much better options. So you can let me know in the comments what you think about that final prediction ahead of when the opening day roster will be announced. I think that's a darn good team. It'll put together a darn good lineup. You'll have depth. The other thing you got to think about, right, is depending on who they can put in the minors due to options and things like that, you're going to have Weston Wilson. You're going to have Cal Stevenson. You're going to have, Buddy Kennedy. Like, these guys are either going to go to the minors or they'll have to clear waivers, but none of them seem to be like majorly intriguing prospects to other teams. So you should be able to get a good number of them through waivers if they have to go through them. And I'm saying all this to say the point here. The depth of the Philadelphia Phillies is better now than it has been in past years when it comes to position players you could call up. You don't have any like major stud depth guys like the Dodgers have, right? But nobody does. The Phillies do have 3 or 4 guys that are going to be in their minor league system with major league experience with this team that you could look at and say, okay, if something happens at a position up at the major league level, we can now dip into the minors and do that too. So you should feel good about the Philadelphia Phillies position players on paper. We know that the approach is going to be the major question with them, but that's pretty much all locked down. And the one spot that was available, I've got flipping to Christian Arroyo over Cody Clemens. And it's simply just a handedness thing. That's all it is. Now, the pitching is a little bit more complicated. The starting is easy, but the bullpen has 2 spots that are up for grabs. And in my mind, there's only one. And I've talked about who's going to get one of those 2 spots on the podcast. I'll remind you coming up next, but I'll also tell you about who in the world is up for that final bullpen spot and who has the edge. We will discuss that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. But let me tell you about my friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. I got to reach down real quick because I dropped the bag of Wonderful Pistachios earlier in the episode that I always show you. The sea salt and vinegar, no shells, my favorite kind. They have a lot of different flavors. They have a lot of different varieties. You can get the shells and no shells. I mean, if you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, you got to crack into a good source of protein with the Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keeping you fuller longer, to help keep you full longer. I can't even talk today, but I don't have to. Wonderful Pistachios, they basically sell themselves. The second you try them, you're going to understand just how great of a snack this is and how good it is for you. And like I said, they got different seasonings, different flavors. I like to not have to crack them open, so I get the no shells. But if you like the experience of cracking open the pistachios, you can do that too. Whatever way you want to consume them, they're the nut, they're the snack that you got to have. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. And trust me, if you're trying to get in shape for summer, that's the way to do it. Wonderful Pistachios. I also want to tell you about our friends over at Monarch Money because this has happened to everybody. You check your bank account and you wonder, where did all my money go? For me, normally it's golf, or maybe it's going out for nice dinners. But between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's way more than that. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you can start building wealth. It's easy to collab with them. Managing money with your partner, super easy, smoother than ever. Let's say your wife's always asking you where all your money's going. You got the joint bank account and everything. You're like, I don't know what she's spending. I don't know what I'm spending. It's causing problems. Well, Monarch Money can help you with that. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Wouldn't it be much easier for you if, rather than asking you, your wife can just go on to Monarch Money and say, oh, okay, that's what's going on. It saves you conversation, save you argument. It makes life a lot easier. And there's a lot more cool features as well. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Go ahead and check them out. All right, let's talk a little bit about the pitching because I've been all over the stuff when it comes to what's going on with the Philadelphia Phillies pitching staff. They have rotation locked down and the bullpen up in the air. And we've known this throughout the spring. But it got a little murkier in the past couple of weeks with Matt Strahm's injury, and I'm not going to assume he's ready for opening day. We're going to live under the assumption he starts the season on the injured list. Maybe he does end up being ready, but I imagine the Phils are going to be conservative. I always say that when we get into this part of the roster projections. But what I had last time was obviously Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, Suarez, Luzardo in the starting rotation. That's not changing. Those are the guys that are going to be in those spots. The bullpen, Kerkering, Ruiz, Alvarado, Romano, Ross, and Banks are all going to be members of the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen, which leaves 2 spots. And last week, I gave those final spots to Taijuan Walker and Devin Sweet. Now, I've told you on this podcast, if you missed the past couple of episodes, you may have missed it, but Taijuan Walker is 100% going to be on this baseball team. He's going to be in the bullpen for opening day. I don't know what his ability as a reliever is going to be, but that's going to happen. So in my mind, I'm operating as Walker, Romano, Ross, Banks, Alvarado, Ruiz, and Kerkering are locks to make the team. But that's only 7 guys, and you need an 8th. Now, Devin Sweet I put on there because I was reading some interesting stuff about him last week and what the Philadelphia Phillies like about him when it comes to his ability to pitch at the major league level. But there are multiple names, especially now that the Phillies have had cut downs, that are still up for grabs for the bullpen. They sent guys like Zuniga got sent down, and McMillan got sent down, and Nick Vespi got sent down. Not sent down, but like sent to minor league camp. So those guys are not going to be in contention to make the major league roster. And now we have a contingency of pretty much 4 guys. And 2 of them rather, are guys that we've had on opening day roster predictions so far. Those 2 are Michael Mercado, who is on my version 1 projection for the opening day roster, and Devin Sweet, who is on my most recent one. But there are 2 other names to keep an eye on. You have Nabil Crismat, and you also have Kyle Tyler. Both of those guys with a little bit of experience. Kyle Tyler is more of a minor league guy, but he has a good amount of strikeouts to his name. He had like 111 strikeouts and 70-some innings at AAA. So the Phillies may look at that and like that. Crismat has had more experience at the major league level, though. Devin Sweet has had a little major league experience. Of course, Michael Mercado did last year with the Philadelphia Phillies. So those are the 4 names to watch. Now, the seeming leader in the clubhouse is Nabil Crismat, who has, if I'm correct, the most major league experience of any of those pitchers when it comes to bullpen work. He spent time with the San Diego Padres, and from 2020 to 2024, he got a good amount of innings with them. So we'll see now with the Philadelphia Phillies if he's able to earn a spot in the bullpen. Now, could this be this year's Junior Marte, where he's a guy that's like you kind of have to have him on the team at some points due to a lack of depth, and then you realize, he's not really cutting it? It could be. But that's the guy that the Phillies seem to like the best. The question is he the guy that I like the best? It doesn't seem like Michael Mercado has had a great spring. It doesn't seem like Devin Sweet has had a great spring. And remember, you might be saying to yourself, Connor, you're the guy that always tells us spring training numbers don't matter. Well, they don't matter for stars. They don't matter for locks to make the roster. These are the guys they do matter for because the margin is so thin between Crismat and Tyler and Sweet and Mercado that spring performance is their chance to earn their way onto the team. It's only guys like this that you really look at what they've done in the spring. And Crismat has been really, really good in spring training for the Philadelphia Phillies in like 6 innings or so. He started their first spring training game. So if that is any indicator, it gives him the nod from the organization, which is why I say he's the leader in the clubhouse for that spot based on what the organization is telling you. I still really like Michael Mercado, though, and I've liked what I've seen. Maybe that's because he's a guy that I saw last year on this team, and I can just visualize it better. So I'm trying not to blind myself with that. And Devin Sweet has had a rough spring, but the Phillies seem to like what he's able to bring. I don't think it's going to be Kyle Tyler because he doesn't have the major league experience that they're looking for. Michael Mercado doesn't have quite enough major league experience. So really for the Phillies, it'll probably come down to Sweet and Crismat. And I'm going to do the same thing here that I did with Christian Arroyo when I talked myself into him in the position players part of the segment. I'm going to give Nabil Crismat the final spot on the Philadelphia Phillies opening day roster. So the full list of names, we'll see how many of these I get right. It'll be a lot because like most of these positions are locked down, but Romuto, Marchand, Harper, Stott, Turner, Bohm, Sosa, Arroyo, Kepler, Marsh, Rojas, Castellanos, and Schwarber. And then I'm going with Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, Suarez, Luzardo, Kerkering, Ruiz, Alvarado, and then we're going to give it to Crismat, Romano, Ross, Banks, and Taijuan Walker. Maybe I nailed it. Now, that's not as impressive to do with only a week to go until opening day pretty much, or a week to go until they'll really announce the opening day roster. But still, it would feel nice to be able to have a good feel on what the Phillies are doing. And the bullpen depth, you could tell by that list, isn't exactly great. They're not making tough decisions because all of those guys deserve to be on the team. They're making tough decisions because you got a bunch of guys that you're trying to talk yourself into being a reliever at the major league level for a ball club of this caliber. We'll see how it works out. But hey, Jose Ruiz was one of those guys a little bit last year, and he turned into a really viable option for them, and now he's a lock to be on the team this year. So things can change quickly over the course of a season. We will see what the Phillies do. We are just 9 days away from opening day, so not that long to wait until we see those names in action in Washington. And as we round out the show today, I've been hearing this about the lineup recently in the past day or so because the Phillies have been flip-flopping what they've been doing at the top of the lineup. And this is another one of those chill out, folks, moments when it comes to what we're talking about with spring training. I'll talk about that coming up as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. But let's talk about Supply House first. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. And whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. They got an easy-to-use website that's packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts for 400-plus top brands, you're going to find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Maybe you need help with an order. Well, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you're always going to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. So join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM, TM for Trade Master, and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5. That's S as in supply, H as in house, 5 the number, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. If you work in the skilled trades, there's nowhere better to go than supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So let's talk a little bit about this lineup overreaction that I'm seeing from Philadelphia Phillies fans. I had this conversation this morning on Kincaid and South Tunis on 97.5 The Fanatic with my guy John Kincaid, where he was worried because the Phillies have kind of been flipping back and forth. Trey Turner will bat leadoff, then Kyle Schwarber will bat leadoff. Then Trey Turner will bat leadoff, then Kyle Schwarber will bat leadoff. And everyone who expected the Phillies to go heavy on the Trey Turner leadoff faith meter heading into the season might be like, wow, well, why in the world are they flipping back and forth? There's some angst with the fan base as to what they're doing with the top of the lineup. This may not be you, but it may be another fan that you know. It definitely is a sentiment in the fan base. They don't really know what they want to do yet. And I disagree with that sentiment entirely. I think this is actually an understandable and a prudent move by the Philadelphia Phillies to do both of these things. Because let's lay out the scenario if you were the Philadelphia Phillies and Rob Thompson. So we got to go back to the beginning for when this team signed Trey Turner. Because Kyle Schwarber was here before Trey Turner. And when Rob Thompson took over in 2022, he started batting Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. It started to really pay off for the Philadelphia Phillies. And you ended up seeing a situation where you say, okay, this really helped the Philadelphia Phillies in the postseason. They did it in 23 and 24. So we know that Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot works to a certain extent. But then you bring in Trey Turner and you say, wow, this guy is the prototypical leadoff hitter. He has been in his career. He will be here in Philadelphia. That's what we're going to do. And then he struggles. 14 games at the leadoff spot in 2023 in his first year with the Phillies. And then they pulled the plug on it because they said, yo, this guy's not having a great year. It's a small sample size, but we got to save the team that's on the slide. We know that Kyle Schwarber is good enough to help us do that. So we're going to go with what works now. And we'll worry about October when we get to October. And that team went to the NLCS. And I don't need to remind you how that season ended, but they won a good amount of games with Kyle Schwarber as the leadoff hitter. Just last year, Kyle Schwarber was a guy that set the National League, the Major League Baseball record for leadoff home runs in a season. So obviously he has a skill set, but the reason that I think they're doing both is because while they believe in Trey Turner as a leadoff hitter, the last time they committed to him, they had to pull the plug on it in just basically like 2.5 weeks worth of games, 3 weeks worth of games. And you don't want to get caught with your pants down. You don't want to tell Kyle Schwarber, hey, buddy, you're a leadoff hitter for the year, cleanup hitter for the year. And Trey Turner's going to bat leadoff. And then 3 weeks into the season, Trey is majorly struggling after you saw him not in the leadoff spot last year, bat 295. And you say, okay, well, we got to make a change. And then Kyle Schwarber's like, hey, man, what the heck? You told me I was batting cleanup. I didn't prepare mentally to bat leadoff. I'm getting used to this new spot. I like it. You want to be able to keep your options open. And Rob Thompson's been really good at that in the way he talks to the media. And he seems to be a guy that's always conscious of that, not saying anything's definitive until it's definitive, because that would paint him into a corner. And Rob Thompson doesn't seem to be a guy that likes to paint himself into a corner with his managerial decisions. So with that in mind, what I think this is the Phillies practicing their contingency plan while also giving Trey Turner reps at the leadoff spot because he's going to start the season as your leadoff hitter. Like opening day, I would be shocked if Trey Turner is not the first name on that lineup. Shocked. And you say, well, then why wouldn't you just have Trey Turner bat in spring training in the leadoff spot every single time? Well, look who was batting cleanup yesterday with Kyle Schwarber batting leadoff. JT Realmuto was in the cleanup spot. He's not going to be batting cleanup for this team, right? So that just doesn't seem to make sense for the Philadelphia Phillies based on what we know about the way they like to build their lineup. The other part of this is it's spring training. Don't look too much into anything when it comes to the lineup and how things are being set up and who's starting when and how long guys are throwing and what positions guys are sometimes playing. Like you're trying things. It's an experiment. As you get closer to opening day, you do try and get closer and closer to what you're actually going to do when the games count. But I don't have any issue with the Phillies starting Kyle Schwarber at the leadoff spot one day and then Trey Turner the next and vice versa. Because one, it gives you a backup plan that you've actually practiced. Two, it's spring training, so I don't look too much into the lineups to begin with. And here's the third thing. Trey Turner's not a rookie. Kyle Schwarber's not a rookie. Like neither of these guys need reps batting leadoff, right? They need reps, and you got to get your swing ready for the season. But if Trey Turner didn't bat leadoff all spring, and then you come out and you say, oh, well, he's our leadoff hitter on opening day, I think Trey Turner would be just fine. He batted leadoff for the Washington Nationals and a World Series winning team that he was a part of there. He batted leadoff at points for the Dodgers. Like he has been a leadoff hitter multiple places in his career, including 14 games here, even though it didn't go well. It's not like he's going to soil himself with the pressure of batting leadoff for the Philadelphia Phillies. Or even if he is, it's not like spring training games are going to remedy that. Same with Kyle Schwarber. He's batted leadoff for this team for basically 3 straight years. He doesn't really need the reps. It doesn't hurt to get them, but you're not doing this to be like, let's try them out. This is not a tryout to see how it works. Rob Thompson's going to make his decision, and those players are both senior enough players that they're going to be able to work under the constraints that Rob Thompson puts on it, which is where they're batting in the lineup. So anyone who's like, well, Kyle Schwarber's taking away reps from Trey Turner, who needs to get used to batting leadoff, that's, to me, is silly. Because I don't think Trey Turner needs reps in the leadoff spot. I think he had a bad year in 2023 that would have happened if he was batting first or ninth or anywhere in between. And I think this year is going to be determined on how ready he is to hit, not what position in the lineup he's hitting. There could be minor effects throughout the season on his performance and the team's performance based on his batting position, which is why we talked about it so much. But I don't think it's like, okay, you need to get this guy out here so he understands what it's like to bat leadoff. That's neither of these guys' situation. And they're both viable options. So why not use both the viable options in games that don't count to give yourself as many data points as possible to understand different situations that could happen throughout the season that you're going to have to be prepared for. If you're freaking out about, oh, the Phillies don't seem set on a lineup decision, guys, it is March, 18th. We're not even to opening day yet. We're worried about the lineup. In the year they went to the World Series, they fired their manager halfway through. And Rob Thompson took another couple of weeks to even nail down what lineup he wanted to do. That was in like July, nearly August, that they figured that out. It is March. There's plenty of time for them to understand what they're doing, take chances on different things, try Trey Turner, maybe go back to Kyle Schwarber if they have to. Being prepared for the multiple options that you have is, for me, a great strategy. For the fans that may feel uncomfortable that Rob Thompson's being wishy-washy, I don't really see it that way. So that's just my 2 cents on the issue with the revolving door lineups that we've seen in spring training. And again, final 2 words are the most important ones: spring training. Take a deep breath. We're going to get regular baseball before you know it. In fact, the Dodgers and the Cubs played regular baseball in the Tokyo series this morning. So opening day is open. Of course, the Dodgers are 1-0. But the Phillies have their chance to improve the 1-0 in just about 9 days. So a lot of stuff to talk about until we get to that point. In tomorrow's episode, I'm going to be able to recap another discussion I get to have with Baseball Hall of Fame writer Jason Stark that I'm having tonight on the airwaves of 97.5 The Fanatic. So some great insight from a great baseball writer on tomorrow's episode. That's all for today's episode, though. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This is the Locked On Podcast Network that brings you Locked On Phillies. And please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all of that great stuff that really helps us out. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.